But I think Roy Keane absolutely set it up for what it is. And Roy played in midfield, so he knows exactly what he's talking about. I think he needs to do more. He doesn't get enough goals. He doesn't get enough assists. I think I know what I'm talking about. Well, he does. Roy does in that instance, for sure. So, I mean, Declan Rice, when you look at it, has made 31 appearances this season, Simon, scored 2, and he's laid on 3 assists. Is there a thought in your mind that with all this talk that he's going to move on, that he's maybe holding back something?
No, I don't think he's at the level that people have put him at. I think he's a very good player. And I had the audacity to say something similar. Now, of course, I will then be greeted by those that have kicked a ball to suggest that I haven't, so I shouldn't know that, and I have that opinion. But I have the same view. I think they packaged Declan Rice up to such a level that they're convincing people that he's worth £100 million plus. There's no doubt that he's a very good player, and playing in a better side with better players will enhance his performances. But Souness has said the same thing. Souness wrote an article about him a few weeks ago talking about the amount of things he doesn't do that would necessarily detail that he's not quite where people think he is. Can he get better? I think Souness was saying he's a centre-back. His best position is a centre-back rather than a centre midfield player, because a centre midfield player, he can't do this. He doesn't have a killer pass. He doesn't score enough goals. He doesn't do this and doesn't do that. And Roy Keane sometimes can veer into the territory of pantomime villain, but when he gets into the territory of talking about things that are explicitly in his area of expertise, which is central midfield players, who is going to have the temerity to suggest that he doesn't know what he's talking about?
Well, that's right.
He's absolutely on the money.
Yeah.
And if you're West Ham, of course you're going to spin a yarn, aren't you, that he's this and he's that and the other, because you know that the football world ostensibly is quite lazy and doesn't necessarily rely on its own eyes, and will buy into that nonsense. And if you can convince people that the devil doesn't exist, you'll find out that he doesn't. And in this instance, if you can convince that Declan Rice is a £100 million player and someone's fool enough to want to pay that for him, then you're not getting a £100 million footballer. He's not a £100 million footballer. He's a very, very good, tidy, very, very well-built footballer, but he's a long way away from what people have built him up to be.
But would you not do the same as the West Ham hierarchy is doing in this instance?
Sure.
Not a penny more, not a penny less.
And
£120 million plus add-ons, and he's yours.
And if someone's fool enough to want to write that cheque rather than wait for the inevitable departure of Declan Rice on his terms, that's their gift to do.
But you would do the same?
Well, of course, there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't mean someone's... West Ham can want whatever they want. When his contract...
Well, that is what they want.
When his contract ticks down, West Ham will get what they're given within reason. So whilst the ideal is, okay, they're in the box seat a little bit now because they've got control over his contract for a period of time, but let's be honest about it. Unless someone is really, really sees there's a benefit in paying that kind of top money, he's a good player. There's no doubt about it. He's a top player, but he's not the player that people have presented him to be. Now, that may well be that he's not at that stage yet, and going into a better club will help him get to that point. Michael Carrick was a really good player. I tried to sign him and agreed a deal with West Ham, but he ended up going to Tottenham when I was at Palace, and he's gone on and become a far better player for playing for Man United. And, of course, going to Man United was that thing that kicked him onto the next level, albeit he was a good player in those other spaces. I just think Roy Keane is on the money. I don't expect anything vaguely resembling sense, me and right, but I do take at face value what Roy Keane has said.
West Ham at the moment sits 16th, Simon. They've won 6 in 24. You have to think that Declan will play a significant part in what happens from this point onwards.
I mean,
so if he does shine from this point until the end of the season, someone will come in and answer the demand from West Ham that 120 million plus add-ons will get you this player.
Well, if you're going to go down the route of Bowley-nomics, then it will be Todd, won't it? Todd will come in and buy him for 120 million quid because he's not really that much interested in valuations. He's interested in what he's building a football club towards. And if they believe that he's the missing part of a jigsaw at Chelsea that's going to be the anchor that they can build around, then they'll pay that money for him. My point is, and I think to some extent Roy Keane's point is, although it's slightly more about his performance in recent terms than his overall performance, is that he's not at that level currently. I don't think he's at that level, full stop. And again, I will veer into the territory of people who will say, what do you know? I suppose I know as much about anybody else, in any walk of life. If you're commenting on politics when you're sitting on your sofa watching television, I don't assume that you know anything more. But the bottom line is that we're all entitled to an opinion, aren't we? And the bottom line is I don't think this is a £120 million player. I'd be very surprised if someone buys him for that level. But you know what it's like. A fool and his money are lucky enough to get together in the first place sometimes.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.